Hey Shaka Bras, welcome to the Fireside. My name is Jake. Very excited to have you back here with me today, or with me for the first time. There's really no way for me to know that, I guess. Anyways, I'm really excited to dive back into this illustrative tattooing series that we've been working on for the last several months. If you haven't checked out this series before, it's all about storytelling through tattooing, focused on illustrative style tattooers. We've had some large-scale illustrative style tattooers, some people that do smaller illustrative work. We've had my buddy Adam Shaw on the series, who is not a tattooer but a really incredible illustrator. Does a lot of comic work, a lot of book covers, novels, mainly pulp novels and things like that. Anyways, just trying to dive in and see what their processes are like, what their thought processes are like, their design processes, what they have in common, all these different high-level artists and illustrators, tattooers, and what they don't have in common, what they do kind of differently from each other. Today, I have a great addition to this lineup. My buddy Andy Chambers, who is one of the really fantastic large-scale illustrative style tattooers working today. And I was lucky enough to be up in Virginia Beach getting tattooed for 2 days in a row, which was pretty crappy, by Andy. And at the end of our second day of tattooing, we sat down and we did this interview. I love Andy's approach to design. He's very kind of systematic. There are things that he really dials into in tattoo design, particularly with shapes and the body and how they relate. We actually taught a workshop together last year, an illustrative tattooing workshop, and I learned a ton through that, just watching him kind of critique the other artists, watching him go through his drawing process. He had a lot of sketches from concept all the way through the finished back piece or whatever, and I learned a ton just kind of looking through his eyes and seeing what he's thinking while he's designing these beautiful, beautiful pieces that he does. And so I'm excited to share his ideas with you today. I'm excited to have him share his ideas with you today. One thing, I've always got a technical issue. This was recorded at the end of a tattoo session. So I was completely wrapped in saran wrap and wearing a lav mic. So occasionally you'll hear something that sounds a little bit like static. It's just the plastic wrap rubbing against my shirt. I knew it was happening. I did my best to keep it to a minimum. And I don't think it's too distracting. I hope it's not too distracting. So I hope you enjoy the episode. One quick thing before we jump in, I want to tell you about a new course that Fireside is launching called Fireside Simplified. It's not out just yet, but I'm really excited, very proud of it. It's the first course that we've put out in several years, and it's focused on the idea of limiting the number of options that you allow yourself during the tattoo design process in order to become more efficient and get to the fun parts of the tattoo design a little bit faster. So it really kind of follows my process from consultation through putting the stencil on the skin all the way through. And I'll tell you what decisions I'm making, why I'm making those decisions, and how I have limited the number of options that I allow myself to make the decision faster and more efficiently. If you think you might be interested in learning more about Fireside Simplify, if you think it's something that might be useful to you, which I hope it is, I will leave a link in the video description below. Just put your email address in it. I won't spam you or anything. I'll just use it to let you know whenever the course is live. And what we'll do whenever it goes live is there are modules with assignments at the end. You'll be invited to a Discord group, a private group, and you'll do the drawings, do the assignment, photograph them, shoot them over to the Discord group. I'll jump in and try to help with the design, see if we can make it a little better, more dynamic, and all kind of work together as a group to make this new course as best as it can be. All right, that's it. Enjoy the episode. Thank you for supporting what we do, and I will see you at the end. So I've told you, like the whole idea is storytelling through tattooing, which we've already done a little bit kind of together through the course, I forget what we called it, the illustrative tattooing workshop that you and I did last year or whenever it was. But so the idea is just like kind of creating a narrative, storytelling, and how illustrative style tattooers are doing it. And so you've heard a little bit of Teresa's episode, and then Nick's done one, and they were pretty drastically different in their like not just their approaches, but their kind of mindsets, I think, a little bit,
So I think, I don't know, and you can help me. I was thinking the best way would just be if we just started going through your process, maybe from the consultation on. Say you have, I'm assuming that a lot of times when people come to ask you, to get tattooed, they don't have like a narrative in mind, right? They just like your dragons, or they like your koi fish. Is that true or no?
I'd say it's just different. It just varies from person to person. So some people, maybe it's just the dragon thing. Mm-hmm. Some people, it's like, hey, Jimmy said you was good. I showed up because Jimmy said you were good,
right.
And that's it. They saw one tattoo, and that's it. I'd say that's the majority of my clients.
Oh.
And then the other ones, the narrative thing, it usually develops as we speak. So I always start with letting them get everything out. Tell me everything you want to tell me, and then I'm going to, give you my perspective on it. And usually I always go back to the same thing. Like my job is to give you the best tattoo I can give you. So we have to find something exceptional in order for us to move forward and make an appointment and all those things. So while I'm asking them questions, I eventually or usually find something that they are into, or something they latch onto, or just something they say that I latch onto that I think could make the tattoo exceptional. A lot of times you'll get a person, because I do so many cover-ups, you'll get a person that says, oh, I was thinking about this one idea, but it's stupid, or it's not going to work, or something like that. And oftentimes it's maybe the one thing that makes the tattoo really cool, makes it more interesting. It gives it that storyteller type of vibe. Sometimes it could just be the motion of the design that tells the story. But I feel like you never know until you try to discover it.
Yeah.
So I started a back piece on a friend of mine, another tattooer in Richmond, Chris Jenkins. We're doing this Japanese samurai woman performing the hirikiri, however you say it. Mm-hmm. And the motion that she's making, the blood coming out, and then the curves that are coming off of her elbow, they're the thing that makes the design. And it's something so simple that I wouldn't think about until I drew it, that he wouldn't think about, and that to me made the design. That area of his back piece, it could have been the make or break moment where the perspective didn't make sense and the motion didn't make sense, but because we were able to get that one little thing on there, it made more of an impact than anything.
Yeah.
And it was the very last thing we did as far as the layout of the tattoo.
I've heard you talk about these types of things a lot, and the thing that's fascinating to me, first off, the term that you use the most, exceptional, and then what makes the kind of the things that make a tattoo exceptional to you sometimes happen unexpected. You're preparing for it. You're preparing as best you can for it, but then the way that it actually happens, you don't always know what it's going to be.
Right. Similar to yours. So I thought the motion of the back piece was cool. I thought the big koi running through the waves was cool. I thought it was enough. It gave it motion. It gave it a certain type of feeling with the shapes. And then because we had extra space to work with on the sides and everything, now we ended up finding that thing that makes it exceptional. It makes it so much more. Doing that, just the big dragon koi with the waves would have been really cool. But now that we have all these little ghost koi, and we have the one that's transitioning where you can see the ghost moving off of it, I feel like that's what makes it exceptional. Right. And a lot of times, for me at least, that those things are not accidental, but they just kind of happen the more we talk and the more we work together. Yeah. So normally it happens when we're talking on the phone, not when I'm actually tattooing you. But we had some extra space, and that's what we filled it with. And to me, it makes a lot more sense that way. And something that I heard Teresa say, not incorporating, but taking into account the other tattoos that are around it. Yeah. So with yours and with Chris's tattoo, there was a little bit of a gap between where I was going to end the tattoo and another tattoo, and I didn't want to leave this weird gap. Like he has this weird section on his shoulder, and we got to do something with it. It would, it would be a disservice if I didn't.
Yeah, so, it'd be horrible for whatever tattooer had to figure out what to do right?
That. Yeah. And, he had his chest piece done 10 plus years ago. The guy that did his arm, is not doing his arm anymore. It's done. So I might as well tie it in. But and those things I feel like make the tattoo exceptional. So a lot of times it's just a conversation. Here lately it's been more of while I'm working on the person, I find some of those things. And it's just because some of my projects now are even bigger than I was doing before. And I thought my projects were big before, but once, like with your piece, when you add the outside of the thigh, when you add a little bit of more space on the calf to cover that knee, it ends up being a lot more work. So then you figure out things to make those areas work, and it just kind of, it gives it more oomph.
Yeah. And it's about, you have to be aware in order for that to work, right? Because you could have just drawn the dragon koi from my back, and the original layout from neck to the back of the knees worked great, and it looked great in the concept kind of sketches. But then you easily could have either left it that way, or whenever I said, or maybe you asked me like, what are you planning to do with the rib cages where they connect to your front piece or whatever, you easily could have just like dropped a couple of more big waves in there or something, just to like frame it.
A big curve or something.
Yeah. But instead it's like you have to be aware of the opportunity to be like, okay, well, because I think at that point we started talking about the whole story of the koi swimming upstream and then hitting the mouth of the waterfall, and so many of them falling off along the way, and then so it's a story of perseverance. So it's like, oh well, it makes sense that some of them would have like died along the way.
Yeah.
And so then that kind of changes the trajectory of the whole piece,
So when the original, I think, Chinese folklore, like the story of the koi, I believe it was a group of golden koi that were going up the waterfall, and they were shimmering. So they caught the eye of some deities or demons. And then they started to use like magic, basically, to make the waterfall move higher. And make it harder for the koi. But then I think the story, don't quote me, but I think the story says like after 100 years or something, this one koi fish, like all the other ones were dying or whatever, or stopped, and this one koi fish made it. And it became like the golden sky dragon or something like that.
Okay.
So I don't remember the story completely, but it's something like that.
Yeah.
And that was a client that brought that to my attention.
So I mean, in tattooing and in drawing and in painting or whatever, a lot of times the best things happen through accidents. You stumble into things, but if you're not like aware and prepared for those things to happen, or prepared to recognize the opportunity, it's easy. Just a lot of people would have just like done a couple of big sweeping waves and framed it out and been like, okay.
Or just leave it.
Or just leave it.
And then you have a 4 or 5 inch gap between the front and the back. And to me, that's a disservice.
Yeah.
So a lot of times when I'm talking to my clients, the one thing I go back to is I have to be able to give you the best tattoo I can give you. If a person shows up and they say, hey, we agreed on everything, but there's this one thing that just looks off to me, I may be open to it, but if it's the one thing that makes things exceptional, then we're at square one again. I'm like, I can't tattoo you because taking that out would make it not exceptional or something of that nature. But
on the subject of making something exceptional, I can remember when we were doing that workshop together last year, and I don't remember what the piece was as a whole, but we're talking about things making a tattoo becoming exceptional with big noticeable things in the tattoo. But something that stood out to me was, you'll know the piece, I'm sure, that was like, it was the bottom of a leg, I think, and you were showing some of your older work to the students in the course, showing them explaining why you made what decisions. And I want to say it was like a street light or something that was low on a leg that was very like...
It was a kaiju destroying a city or whatever, and the one little thing that I just really liked about it was the interaction. It wasn't necessarily the streetlight, but the interaction between the character and that whole part of the scene. So it was stepping on a piece of an overpass that had collapsed, and you could see a semi truck under the edge of the overpass. You could see the dip and the street lines and the little concrete barrier between the two lanes.
Yeah.
And then as the sidewalk progressed, there was a little tiny street light that was on in between the two fingers, because it was like a big 3-finger thing, you know. It's smashing into the concrete, and in between the two fingers was a street light that was still on.
That's right.
And it's not just the street light, you know, it was the interaction with the character's hand and the dip of the architecture or the landscape beneath it. It was all of that I felt really sold the design and made it exceptional, because if you just did a monster with some buildings in the background, like, it does the trick, but it doesn't give you that oomph.
Yeah.
And by doing that, I was able to get some size comparison. You could see the size of the street lamp, the median between the highways, the semi truck underneath of the overpass, you know. So it gives you the impression that this thing is massive.
Yeah.
And yeah, to me, the one thing that was so cool about it was that little tiny street light that was on that nobody ever saw.
Yeah. Yeah. The reason I brought that up is one, because that I remember all of that now, but for whatever reason the street light stuck with me, because when you were talking about it that day to the class, I thought, wow, what a small piece of this overall thing that like, it showed kind of how I guess dialed in to the piece you were, you know, in order to it showed, I guess, and to me it showed your commitment to the tattoo. And so to back that out and kind of recognize what I notice with exceptional tattooers, using your term, exceptional, usually it's that type of thing, the attention that they're paying to. In Teresa's case, we were talking about, she talked about the importance of backgrounds, you know, to her. And I've watched I've gotten tattooed by some really great tattooers, and I've watched really great tattooers work. And what I found that I think is kind of comforting is that what really separates great tattooers from average tattooers isn't necessarily their ability to draw better or talent or anything like that, but it's just their willingness to work a little harder, a little longer, to make it as best as it can possibly be.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times, what would be a finished tattoo to a regular tattooer, it's not that it's not as good as what you might do. It's just that you still have 3 or 4 hours to go on it, and they're finished with it, you know. And so when it's like, so that last example isn't a good example of that, because that was planning. But let's say, for example, you've spent a lot of time working on me. You spend a lot of time making sure that your that curves sweep just the right way.
Yeah,
motion.
To me, motion is a big thing for some reason, and I've gotten some cool compliments from other tattooers on it, so it makes me want to like strive for that a little bit more. But it could be something like the street lamp and the interaction between the overpass and all that, or it could be the curves and how consistent things are. Like, I feel like sometimes it could be the smallest thing that really makes the tattoo have more oomph, or just makes it stronger or more apparent what's going on. Like, you're selling the whole idea better by doing these few little things. So for yours, and I guess for any tattoo that has like some cool flowy stuff in it, is to make sure that flow really fits the body the right way. Because, you know, when you're going up both backs of the thighs with one consistent curvature of the water, so like with your back, it was very important to me with each thigh that they both rolled in a similar fashion, so that it didn't mess with the overall flow of the design. And then for Chris's back, it was something very similar. I had to make sure that one thigh to the other thigh, there was some type of connection, some type of visual marker. Almost like, you know, when you do something really big, you use size markers like little people or trees or whatever. I feel like I need visual markers. Maybe not everybody needs them, but I need visual markers to show the transition from this thigh to this thigh.
Right.
You know, I've seen plenty of really awesome tattoos that they didn't necessarily have a visual cue to show you that it was just something cool and decorative, and it framed out the back piece, you know. My buddy Alex has a piece like that. The backs of the thighs are really awesome and decorative, and it fades up into the design. But for me, if the bottoms of the thighs are a huge part of the design, then they need to coexist. They can't just be completely separate things and then it still makes sense. So with yours, it's the flow of the waves that go up like this. With Chris's back piece, it's the moss and the little textures of the rocks that follow from one thigh to the other thigh. And it makes the scene more believable once you get up to above the waistline, and you can tell that these things on the backs of the thighs are just in front of the main subject matter. So it helps to sell the whole design. And those things are the kind of things that I find to be exceptional.
Yeah.
Maybe they're big things, but I consider them little things. Because in the grand scheme, it's just a curve.
Yeah.
Or it's just a slant of the background running, you know, the ground running underneath a character.
Speaking, before I make my point I was going to make, you mentioned the immediate foreground. Something I've found, you know, Teresa was talking a lot about background, and I agree with everything she said about how a lot of tattooers ignore backgrounds completely, and they're so vital. A lot of times I've found that whenever I have worked on my main focal point, kind of the star of my composition, I think I've built my background well, sometimes the thing to me that's the easiest to neglect and forget about is a more immediate foreground in front of the main character.
Yeah.
I forget about it all the time, and you mentioned it with the moss and whatever you just said that made me think of it.
Moss, leaves and stuff.
Yeah.
But it's still a secondary thing.
It's a secondary thing, yeah. But a lot of times you think about your main element being, because it's the focal point, being the center of attention, being the first thing that you see.
Yeah.
And you tend to forget. Everyone, even good tattooers do that.
Oh yeah. I mean, you never know what kind of mindset you're going to be in when you go to draw this stuff. There could be all kinds of things outside, you know, in life that are distracting you from whatever you're doing.
Yeah, yeah. The second point I was going to make was, you know, you can make those. I mean, you draw a lot analog, I know, but you draw in Procreate, and you can make. You know that you can make big sweeping curves and just hold the stylus and it becomes a great curve on its own.
Yeah.
And you can print it that way. But that's completely different than it sitting on the body the right way. And I think that's what you focus so much time on, is like the stencil is right. You know, I mean, like the curve, when you made the drawing and you made the stencil, it was the curve that it needed to be. But then once it crosses over my, you know, deltoid to trap to whatever, it maybe doesn't look, you know, the same way. Right. And I think that's one of those things where a lot of us would discount, would discount it and just say, like, well, I mean, I drew it with a geometric tool, so I know it's right. It's just the body that did that. But you go a little further and go like, well, I'm going to draw it to the body because that's where everyone's going to see it.
Boy, because it annoys me.
Yeah.
It's, you know, it's just an annoyance or like a thing that I can't get around. I have to draw it on. If I put the stencil on and I realize this one little curve looks flat in a spot, I can't, in good conscience, tattoo that. I have to fix it, even if I'm faking it. Like where you have a big dip in the middle of somebody's back, and you have an arm from a character that goes right in front of that dip, and it makes the bend weird. You gotta fix that.
Yeah.
To just do it and it look all crooked, to me, is a disservice. So we've been talking about Chris's back piece in relation to yours. His back piece, the girl is creating this motion. So her forearm goes right across the dip of the back. Now, I could have left it and it would just be a weird curve in her arm. Or I could have tried to manipulate it, which is what I did. By using the blood spatter coming out like this, I was able to manipulate the curve and make it look straight even when it's not straight. And I feel like that was one of the things that's a make or break type of thing. You could have an awesome tattoo and then you have this one spot in the middle that's just weird. Then in my opinion, you mess the whole tattoo up.
Right.
So it's really just an aggravation thing. It's not that I'm not really holding it in high regard. I just can't help it.
Yeah. I was along those same lines when you were setting up today, and I was working on the little the drawing for the seminar that I'm doing. One of the points of that specific drawing is that a lot of things that look right on the body when you're thinking about the perspective of where it's placed on the body, different planes that it covers, look completely wrong on flat paper.
Right.
And vice versa.
Yeah. So many people look at a sleeve design and they just look at it and they're kind of confused. But then when I explain, like, this is your elbow, this is the ditch, this is where it wraps around, they seem to get it, at least for the most part.
Yeah, I think that's an important point, especially when you're dealing with complex changes, like up finishing a sleeve over a shoulder or finishing a sleeve onto a back piece, where it's a very like deliberate and noticeable change in the plane, and it's one thing. Well, it's kind of the same thing, and you've talked about it a lot. Your sleeve design, body mapping stuff that you've been doing is really, really, really good. But I think about, like, in a natural standing position, someone views this way, and then if it travels onto the back, they view it completely differently, and they can't see the first area of it, and or the area that it attaches to. And so the relationship of those things in a flat plane are completely insignificant. They don't mean anything at all.
Right. Because you're working with a big slope up here. So I had a buddy recently, I did a big dragon koi on. He wanted some type of dragon coming out from it, but he had no idea what to do.
Yeah.
And I could only think of it in a couple of ways. Like, I couldn't really think of this big slant. So I had to just kind of draw a piece of it and then draw the rest on to fit.
Yeah.
Like, I needed to draw the dragon's head so the neckline would come down like this, and the claw would be up here, but so that it wouldn't be completely on top of the trap. It can't. There's just it just doesn't look right,
So when I'm thinking back to the workshop that you and I did, and I'm thinking about some of the advice that you gave the tattooers that were taking the workshop, and I might be wrong. It seemed to me that, like, your instinct is shape and, like, relationship based first, and then, like, story, I hate to say second, but, like, I can remember I'm thinking about, like, Shelley. Do you remember Shelley's piece with the like the gypsy and all that kind of stuff?
Yes.
A lot of it had to do with, like, from what I remember, most of the suggestions that you were making had to do with, like, placement, shape, how where it sat on the body, what it would look like with a short sleeve shirt on. And then as we started to move things around, you're like, oh, that would give you an opportunity to, like, take that little carriage and do this, and then that might mean this. So it's like you took the abstract first, and then you kind of created the story based on what it opened up for you.
I think it just kind of naturally happens that way a lot of times. Maybe it's because a lot of times I work background to foreground. In the Shelley instance, particularly because she had a lot of background and her main focal character was just one small part of the middle of the tattoo. So the main focal character was good, and it was in a good spot of the design, but everything else around it was going to make it or break it. And if it didn't make it, then you failed. So I feel like I spend a lot of time finding those things. And yes, shape, for me, shape is a huge thing. I really want appealing shapes. It's one of the things that I notice in a lot of other people's tattoos that I enjoy. Like other artists that I just enjoy the way their large tattoo design looks. Like Steve Moore and Teresa, like some of the shapes in their designs are just really appealing shapes. And we are, designing for the most part, and you're going to wear clothes, so it needs to look nice with whatever you're wearing. At least needs to look nice with your body, with the curves of your body. So there, the background thing, to touch on that, if the background doesn't make sense, if it doesn't look appealing, if it doesn't end well into the skin, then you drop the ball, you know? Like if it's just a messy edge with no reason for it to be that way, then why not put an appealing shape there?
Yeah.
And make the edge of it appealing. So yeah, shape, I feel like shape is a big thing. Maybe it's because I try to fake movement in the design a lot of times.
Yeah.
Even when there isn't movement, obviously, because it's a stagnant or a still image. But like with a character going like this, it could be the cloth on the character or it could be the background that gives it movement. It could be an external element. It could be something directly related to what it's doing. But I don't know until I draw it, you know. So with Chris's piece, it's not necessarily the cloth on the character as much as it is the blood that's coming out and the motion of the stuff that comes off of her elbow. It gives the impression that she's making the gesture, the character is doing the thing that I'm trying to get them to do. So shape plays into that a lot. You know, it's more, when I'm sketching, I find a lot of times it's not the actual subject matter that I'm sketching that makes the most difference. It's the shape of the subject matter. Whether it be waves or blood or another external element like cloth flowing off of a character or something, that could be the one thing that really makes it exceptional or makes it intriguing, makes it interesting to look at. I feel like shapes make things appealing. So you really want to make them appealing to look at. Like when we look at that painting, the shapes around the edges of that painting are part of what make that appealing. The character itself is very impressive, but the shape of that hair really makes the whole design look super nice.
And if you could see background all the way around it, like if the white framed it, it would ruin the piece. It needs to, it's the negative shape, or it's the background, the shapes that the background makes is a huge part of the piece.
Your image and your character or whatever could be really, really impressive technically. But if it has no background design, if it's not designed to fit the body, then to me it just kind of falls a little short, you know? I love looking at every type of tattoo. I love it when people can achieve really crazy, amazing, realistic things on the skin. But if you don't put any thought into how the background is affected by the skin or how the skin affects the background or how to bring skin into the design, let's say a person has no tattoos up here. A person has no tattoos up here and they don't want their hand tattooed. I feel like it's important to bring that amount of skin into the design somehow. And who knows what that's going to be, but
something I was that you mentioned earlier, you were talking about how tattoos look with clothes on, and when you were laying out my back, I noticed the thing you were paying close attention to was where my pants line was and making sure that I know you've talked about tattoos that like really great back pieces, like, you know, neck to knee back pieces that get cropped weirdly with pants on. So it's like that tattoo it's an awesome tattoo, but it looks best when they're completely naked.
Which is, you know, kind of the same with mine, and I love the tattoo. I love it. I love it so much. It's more than I thought it would be. It's everything I thought it would be and more. But it's so big. For me, I love that part of it. For the average person, they can't appreciate that as much. So I wanted to give them something appealing to look at. So I just did a Phoenix leg sleeve the other day, or I started laying it out, and my original plan was to have the head of the Phoenix way up here because I just thought it would look nice with the whole design. But I realized that this person really wanted you to be able to tell it was a Phoenix. So I ended up putting the head right above the knee and having the feet and stuff on the thigh, or on the calf, so that if he was wearing shorts, you would still be able to tell, like it would still be appealing. You would still be able to know that it's a big Japanese Phoenix. So I feel like that maybe can vary person to person whether or not they care about that. You know, like I don't really care too much that you can't tell that that's a girl on my arm. I still love the tattoo. I love the way the leaves come down and everything. But most people, when I show them the top of the arm, they're like, "Oh wow, I didn't know that was a girl," because all you can see is the bottom of the dress. But the shapes are appealing, and the depth is still like it still looks correct. It looks nice. It looks appealing. So, I think whether or not you can see the subject matter can make it appealing or not make it appealing, or it could just be the shapes. In general.
Yeah, I think more often it's the shapes. I think like it's funny. I say that, but like I started a dragon sleeve earlier this week, and I had it in my head before I started the piece and when I started thumbnailing that the dragon head was going to be at the top of the arm and looking up, and I think you start, and of course people would know if they looked at the arm and they saw a talon, they saw whatever, they would know it's a dragon. But I'm thinking about how the head was going to get cropped by different lengths of shirts, and it's on a woman, so maybe she wears shirts that go down to her elbow, maybe she wears short sleeve, or maybe she wears 3/4 sleeve, and it's like it became important to me, I guess, that like, no, I want the head on her forearm. I want heads. I just decided I want the head low, so you can where you can see it well. So that contradicts what I just said. I think overall it's the shapes, but it's easy to get caught up in the idea that it's like, no, I mean, I want like you said with the Phoenix, I want the important part. I want the thing that tells everyone what it is, like where everyone sees it first.
And I think because of your client, that could make the decision for you. Yeah. I really like the idea of just designing tattoos and offering them up, because then you don't have those things that are kind of nagging at you. Like for me, I guess nagging may not be the best way to say it, but for me, I constantly think about those things. I constantly think about the conversation that I had with the person and what they seem to really touch on or not care about. And oftentimes that will dictate how I draw the design. Whereas if I had just drawn it myself, I wouldn't have to worry about any of that. And I could just show it to him and be like, this is the most appealing spot for this to be in, and this is why I did it. And that's something too, I always like to explain that to my clients. I always like to explain like why something is where it is, why I did what I did in the design. And usually I find that people appreciate the design even more. Like recently I finished a tattoo on a guy. It was his only big tattoo. He had 2 really tiny little armbands. They didn't really, they weren't significant at all. They were really thin. And we did a big dragon, covering up the armband and covering half of his back. And I finished the tattoo. I thought he really liked it, but it's one of those situations where you're looking at the person's facial expressions. You can't really tell. They're telling you they like it. They're tipping you well. And then their face is going, I don't know. So once I explained to him the shapes in the design, why I did them the way that I did them, he was so much more stoked on the tattoo. He was stoked that, like, I could see it on his face, that he was stoked that I made the dragon kind of militant in a way, like the shapes in the design seemed that way to me. So because that belief or that thought was in my head, it made the drawing closer to that. Rather than if I never thought about that in the first place, maybe I would have never drawn the shapes that way. But because I was thinking that way, and I'm thinking of the type of person that he is and what he went through and all these things, that's dictating my shapes. And then I explained it to him and he seemed to like it a lot more. Whereas it could be the exact opposite with another person.
I think a lot of times people, that I feel like that they, clients, if they have a leg to stand on, if they can, like, whenever their friends see it before they even get input from their friends, they're like, yeah, I love how he laid this in this way because of this, because you told him that's what you did,
Right. I put the thought in there, or I let him know. I feel like that's significant, because if they don't know those things, then they could just like it, or they could be analyzing it in a way that me as the artist, I just never thought about analyzing it that way.
Yeah. It's funny that you use the shapes and reflecting back on like him and how you felt about his personality. That is, I was telling you earlier, we've got a new course coming out called Fireside Simplified, and it's just this like, it's using the client. The idea is that you use the client to help you make all of the big decisions, kind of if-then scenarios. And so, like the raven that I was drawing, I was designing that for my wife, and you could use cubes to draw a raven, or you could use spheres to draw a raven, or anything in between. And so one of the modules of the course is about that exactly. Like, pay attention to the person. Are they really soft-spoken? Are they taking control of the consultation? Are they allowing you to like? How do you feel about them? Are they a hard-edged shaped person? Are they a soft shape? Are they a like soft, soft light source, or a really harsh light source? Right. And those kinds of things can just tell. And of course, you could go either way with those with them, and it would still be right. But on the front end of a design, when you have so many options, you can get overwhelmed. It's nice to just go like, all right, that lady was definitely a sphere, kind of soft, flowy lady. That's what this is going to be.
I really like the idea of making the tattoo fit the person in more than a physical way. More than just the fitting the shapes of the body. Like, I really like the idea of the entire thought and look of the tattoo fitting that person's personality and the way they look and things like that. Because sometimes I feel people, they have tattoos that don't match their personality at all. And then some people, every tattoo they have, it's like, that looks like it belongs on that person.
Yeah.
And for some reason, I really like that. So it's something I always try to go for. Like, I always want it to, I don't even know if it's fitting their personality, but just
it's your interpretation of them.
Maybe that's it. My interpretation of the type of person they are, or the vibe they give off.
I think so. And I think especially doing the type of work that you're doing, larger scale stuff, a lot of it is very visible. Like you were just talking about a claw or talon going up on a neck, or a lot of the tattoos that you're designing and doing, people see the tattoos 2 seconds after they see their eyes. You know what I mean? It's like they see their eyes, or maybe they see the tattoo before they look at their face, whatever. It might be. And so I think that approach is responsible and the right approach.
I think responsible is a good word. I kind of feel responsible for just this person's tattoos looking nice, and it's not just looking nice, but looking nice with them, their clothing, their other tattoos. If you have a tattoo that's really close to what we're doing, I want to make sure they look nice together. I don't want to just leave an awkward space in between the two, because I feel that's doing a disservice to the client. So it's the first time I ever had Guy Aitchison on the show. He talked about, of course, he's running into old tattoos all the time, and he talked about the importance of working with the edges of, like paying attention to the existing tattoos, and even going a step further. He's like, a lot of times, like I'll just like, if a little chunk of color fell out of the old tattoo, or if the if I could just, if I've already got the liner out and I could just bump up a few things and bring the old tattoo back to life. He's like, you would be amazed at what that does for like someone's opinion of you, that you like took the time to not only like address the other tattoo, but like, man, you don't tell the person who did this originally, and I won't either, and we'll just dress it up a little bit more, and it doesn't take a lot of effort, No, I ran into that a lot with Chris. He has several random tattoos. Like he had like a Reaper over here and a little cartoon character of Deadpool. And it looks like he's kicking the dragon in the back of the neck, like the dragon that we did on the front. Which I think is hilarious. But how that tattoo interacts, because it's such a small piece, how it interacts with the two very large tattoos that we did on either side of it is really important. And it could have been an area that really could have been detrimental. And the same thing, he had another tattoo on the other side. It could have been detrimental. And I didn't really go into it too much. I did redo the one tattoo on the one rib, but the other rib, I just tried to make the background fade into it and make it look nice. Otherwise, you just have this weird random tattoo in front of two huge tattoos. Like it's, from his collar or from the center of his sternum down to his knees on his front, and then from his shoulders all the way to the middle of his calf on the back.
Yeah.
So it's just a lot of room. Like with yours, we tried to pull off with the green stuff on the thigh that was a pre-existing tattoo. Right. With his, he has a couple of tattoos on the bottom that were kind of going around. He has a couple of tattoos on the ribs that were going around. He has a full chest piece that were going around, a big piece on the neck that ties in to everything.
Yeah.
And I feel like not taking that into consideration would be, it could be a very bad design choice.
But that's a lot. I mean, all of the things you just mentioned that you had to at least consider, maybe not all of those things affect the entire design, but at some point they affect the design. I know with mine, you're something that I noticed as soon as we started laying this out, or you started laying this out, is that you're paying attention, because there are a lot of waves and things in the piece that you're doing, and I already have the big piece that Jeff Ensminger did on my front. You're like not only trying to match kind of the color, but also to an extent the style of the wave, at least as it gets closer to the front piece. And then also like, well, how far up does the teal actually come before it falls out into skin? Because I'll try to do it. And you were actually doing that. You were looking at a piece on my torso to determine how far to pull the teals on my lower leg,
Well, it's such a similar, because they're both finger waves.
Yeah.
It's such a similar element. I feel like if we did it completely different, it would have a really odd look to it, Whereas, your wife is going to see all of these tattoos together.
Tons of ladies are going to see it, yeah. No, my wife, right. Yeah.
It needs to look relatively consistent. Or if it's just you looking at it in the mirror, to see a tattoo that goes from here to here on the front and the back, even if you have nothing on the tops of your thighs, like the one on the back goes all the way down. So it's going to affect everything that's on the front. So I feel like it would just be weird if it didn't have some type of similarity.
Yeah.
If it wasn't at least semi-consistent, I could have went with a crazy different type of finger wave. And I did make some of the shapes quite a bit different. But I also wanted to use certain things like the waves on your front. I noticed the top portion of the wave often comes out a little longer. And because there's so many different ways to draw finger waves, I wanted to make sure that the waves on your back had a similar look, that the middle of them got a little bit longer. Like it wasn't just a bunch of tight waves that kind of fit together. That the middle of it, or the tip of it, was quite a bit substantially longer than the other stuff. Because you can even see the stuff right here on your throat,
upper neck.
The way that long curve comes up, that's important to me at least. So so I more often than not, I feel like I have to do those things rather than I want to do them. I just feel like it's needed.
Well, before we wrap it up, we've talked a lot about about a lot of things, but not a ton about storytelling. I've been asking everyone at the end of each episode, like, is there a piece that, for any reason, like stands out to you from a similar to what we were talking about with mine, how the story kind of either came together unexpectedly or turned out better than you expected from a narrative kind of standpoint, not as much from like a technical or a shape standpoint, but from a narrative standpoint. Can you think of anything that, like a piece that if we were going to drop it in, which I'm sure we're dropping, images and video in of work throughout this episode, but can you think of a piece that you would say like this one really worked from like a narrative or a storytelling standpoint? I got all the pieces fell in place.
Well, I'd say that maybe this fox right here is a good one. For that. So I really based the majority of that design off of the person herself, the type of person she is, the type of things that she likes. She's very into Alice in Wonderland. I had done an Alice in Wonderland leg sleeve on her based on the original drawings of from Lewis Carroll. So it was very specific. And once we had finished that, I had an understanding of just how much this story meant to her. Like, it was a childhood thing. She was very, very into Alice in Wonderland. It was not a, I thought it was cool because I saw it on social media and they made a movie about it thing. She was very against the movie. She read the story as a kid, you know? So she was very attached to the story. The designs on her leg had to be specifically from the story. And just knowing that, because I participated in doing a bodysuit on her husband, who had gotten a bodysuit from me and several of the other artists at the shop I was at the time. So I had developed a relationship with her. I developed a relationship with her husband. I knew the type of people they were. They like to eat strange things. They were into like the macabre type of stuff. She was very into Alice in Wonderland. So picking and choosing different things from the things that I knew about her. Animals in clothing, which are a big thing in Alice in Wonderland. So I needed something that was strange, you know, something that was like macabre or like, I guess that, I think that's how you say it, but I'm not really sure.
Yeah.
I think so. I needed that certain element to it. So we did flowers, white flowers that were filled up with blood. And then like the teapots brewing the blood and making some kind of mixture out of it. And then the fox herself sipping out of the flower filled with blood. The gown and everything that's on the character, I wanted to make sure it had that type of look. She could have been wearing anything. She could have been wearing suspenders. Who knows? But I felt like that type of dress really went with the certain style and the things that she was going for. I felt like the tree branches rolling through the edges of it with very minimal foliage on the tree branches kind of gives it that dark, like not necessarily sinister, but darker kind of feeling, like fall or winter where things aren't really warm and it's just like a little bit different feeling. And then of course I wanted to make sure that the color was striking or that the colors went together well. I know she likes bright colors. I had gotten, like I said, I got to do that leg sleeve on her, and then I did her arm in a completely different type of subject matter, but knowing the kind of weird, quote unquote, things she was into, we ended up going with a weird animal and an amalgamation of different animals for the bottom.
Oh, I might know that piece you're talking about. I didn't know it was the same person.
Bright, yeah. Everything ended up really bright, you know, and maybe it was just because of the way I was thinking of it or my thought process. So I also wanted to make sure that it went with that tattoo, and it was a big pink hairless cat with antlers or horns. So the background for that was a green. I wanted to make sure that the background for that one went with the background from this one. I wanted to make sure that there was some kind of cool color play between the two. And I know that the fox itself is going to be orange. So that kind of dictated my color choices for everything in the design. I needed the background to be green. If I want the main character to be kind of different tones of orange and browns, then I need a color that's going to look nice with both of those, with the orange and the green. So I went with more of a purple and magenta for the fabric of the dress. And I needed something to complement that purple and just stand out, because I like the idea of cutting out shapes by using either shading or a color. So I needed to cut out the shapes of the big mushrooms that she's sitting on, because if I don't cut out those shapes, then it's going to disappear or it's going to become less significant. It's not going to make the visual correlation with the person that's looking at it. So that was the reason why I made the tops yellow and the bottoms purple, because I thought it would contrast each other well, and it would contrast the green and pink, red, magenta. from background to foreground. So oftentimes I find that it's one thing will dictate another thing, that will dictate another thing, that will dictate another thing. So my decisions move from, I call it like an order of importance, you know, like this one thing is very, very important. And the fox has to be orange or it doesn't carry the same weight. So all of my other choices kind of were dictated by that and the background of the other sleeve and things of that nature. But, so this one I would say, like, I really wanted to tell the story of just this humanoid type of creature, fox or whatever, because in Alice in Wonderland, so many of the animals have human type of features and characteristics and mannerisms. So I wanted to give the same thing to that character. And I wanted the color play to be well, and I wanted to give the certain type of, you know, feeling. And the blood was the one thing that I felt would give it that edge, you know? It would be the thing that makes her a little bit more interested in it, as she really hates birds. So there's a little bird skull on top of her headdress to kind of go along with the, you know, because when she told me I could do her arm, she said, do whatever you want. I said, what about a big bird? And she said, I hate birds. So I was like, okay, no bird. So that's why I did that. And I feel like, I don't know, it just kind of builds itself. Usually when I have a consultation with somebody, it lasts almost an hour. Sometimes it could be more. I recently talked to a kid for like 3 hour-long segments to really, you know, nail down what we were going to do for the tattoo. He was very upset that he had gotten a tattoo that he didn't like. Like it stressed him out so much that he developed some like polyps or something in his throat. And like he was actually having health issues because he was stressing himself out so much. So it's been a long time talking to this dude, and you know, at first it just seemed like he really wanted a tiger, but now we've ended up on a full samurai sleeve that's going to cover the tiger that he has. So, you know, without exploring the type of person he is and the things that he really likes, I would have never ended up on that. I would have just said, oh, hey, you like a tiger? Let's cover that with a tiger. And that would have been it. And that's the first thing I offered to him. I actually sent him a sketch, and he's like, well, if we're doing a whole sleeve, can we not do a tiger? And I was like, well, damn, I just spent
spent a lot of time drawing
however long sketching up that tiger. But you know, eventually we found something that we thought would be exceptional, that we thought would fit him as a person. So yeah, that. I think I'm getting off track.
It's just a matter of putting in the time, and I think that's a hard thing to teach people to do from the consultation standpoint. Is like, it's really about how you relate with people individually. It's like, I don't think anyone could make like a here's how to, you know. I did an episode on controlling the consultation once, and it was actually it was a solo episode. It was just me and a camera, and it was actually a pretty big episode. It's been years and years, but for that point in time, it was one of our bigger episodes. And I look back at it now, and I was like, well, all that makes perfect sense with the way that I interact with people, but it doesn't necessarily make sense with the way that anyone else interacts with people, you know?
Right.
So that's such a hard thing to teach someone, you know?
It really is.
Yeah.
So I'm another tattooer, my coworker and I were talking about something very similar. We're gonna listen in on each other's consults to find the differences between the two. Because he was saying his consults are 5 to 10 minutes.
Oh, wow.
My consults are at least 30 minutes. I might talk to them for an hour. By the time I get done talking to them, they may need more time to think about it and then come back to me. But if I had just drawn something and offered it up, I wouldn't have to talk to them about it.
That's true.
It would just be like, you like the idea, this is the idea, and that's it. And now we're tattooing it. And I feel like that makes it so much easier sometimes, but I haven't done that a whole lot. I've only done that maybe, you know, several times. But
before we wrap up, one thing I wanted to say about that piece that I think that you do really well, that is very tricky to me is you were talking about the orange and the fox, the kind of fuchsia or magentas in the clothing, and then the reds of the blood. And I think one of the tricky things for most people is working with, you know, multiple colors on the same side of the color spectrum, you know, all some version of a red, with 3 different subject matters, and and making them like cohesive. You know what I mean? And that worked really well in that piece, but it's a thing that I think a lot of people struggle with. And last time we podcasted, or maybe it wasn't a podcast, maybe we were just talking, but you were talking about kind of how you, how you transition a single, say it's a snake or a dragon or whatever, and like, you know, kind of the kind of form, the first part of the light shape might be your brightest kind of red, and then maybe you go to like a peach, and then maybe it turns to like a cool blue at the highlight, or a white or something like that at the highlight. And I think a lot of people, most people I think, struggle with using the same family of color, but then like shifting between warm and cool versions of that color. You know what I mean?
Okay. I think I make it simple for myself by just basing it off of complementary color tones, you know. So for example, that one, the background is all lime green of some sort. Well, for it to be lime green, it has to have some type of yellow in it. So now you have green and yellow. And all my shadows have purple in them. All the shadows for the dress have purple in them. The shadows for the orange have purple in them. I like to mix purple and orange to make my browns. So my complementary color tone in the background, which is a high yellow to make that lime green, is now complemented by all the purples that I used in the shadows, which registers to your eye as a shadow. Also, using the magenta, I'm using like a derivative of red. You know, it's a very reddish tone. So it's complementary to the green in the background, which makes it stand out. So I have yellow and purple complementaries, red and green complementaries, and then my purple and blue complementaries come into the shadows of the underside of the mushrooms. So because I had already used so much yellow, a different purple or a softer purple was just kind of a go-to, or I didn't have to think about it. You know, it was like, that color would work perfect right there because I don't have anything else to contrast it. And then making the flowers look more pale, I just went with gray because I had already used purple, I had already used yellow, I had already used red and green. I didn't want it to be too much of the same thing. It had to stand out in a certain type of way. Whereas normally, if it wasn't something completely different, I probably would have mixed my yellow and purple or my red and green, and I would have made some type of gray out of 2 complementary colors, canceling each other out. I would have probably used that type of gray in the rest of the design, but because it was another element that I needed it to stand out in a different way, I just used a gray. And the red, because it's so sparse, it creates like the tension that's there. It doesn't necessarily match the magenta, but it goes along with it because I use the same deep red that I mix my purple with. So it still has a similar color, even though it's not the same color. To me, it's the same as if you had a design where you used the same 3 colors at the top that you used at the bottom, but you used them in a different order in a different way. It could look completely different. So I like that too. I like the order of how you use it can make it look completely different. So I use that to my advantage as much as I can, as well as the complementary color shift. Because once I heard it explained like that your cooler color in the complementary color shift is registers to your eye as a shadow. When I heard that, it was like a mind-blowing moment, you know? I'd never heard it explained like that. I didn't know that it registered to your eye like that. So just hearing that made me think of colors completely different.
Yeah.
You know, anytime you have a yellow, you can have a purple-ish color of some kind. And it can be the complementary, it can be the shadow, it can make things stand out more, it can make things recess more, depending on how you use it. If you mix it with the yellow, or if you use it completely separate. It has two different ways of achieving whatever it is you're trying to achieve. Like when you mix color in the cap or when you mix it in the skin, it's completely different. Even if you dip from one cap to another cap and then run it in the well of the cartridge or the machine, the needle, it has a completely different look. So you have 3 different ways of achieving something, of achieving this balance or this look. You know, it could look, if you took, let's say, smoke purple and yellow. If you mix them in the cap, you could make just a really nice green. You can make a really nice grayish green if you use more purple than yellow. You can make a really vibrant green that's like weird if you just mix a little bit of purple into the yellow. So if you had a lot of purple, it's one color. If you have a little bit of purple, it's another color. If you mix the 2 in the skin, it's a different color. It's a different type of tone.
Yeah.
So I feel like using that to your advantage as just one more little tool in your arsenal is key when it comes to that type of thing.
Yeah.
Which for me, oftentimes it's mixing it in the skin that makes the biggest difference, rather than mixing it in the cap and just using a cap of it.
When you say mixing it in the skin, are you talking about like laying one down, letting it heal, and laying something on top of it, or mixing it at the same time?
Just like you do color pencil.
Just laying a color over a color.
If you use a grayish purple color pencil and you whip it out, and then you take a yellow and you blend right on top of that. To me, that's like blending in the skin. It's like whipping a purple out and then blending your yellow back on top of that, and you make another color by blending it in the skin. You also make a different color if you had done it in the cap. And if you had done it in the well of the cartridge or the needle, you know, then that would be an even different color.
Yeah.
And it depends on how much purple you got, how much yellow you have. It could make that dingy color that we used on the fins of the koi, or it could make a really strong green that's too strong that you don't want to use.
Yeah.
So I guess you have to have a little bit of discernment. You have to decide, you know, what is going to be the best avenue or what color looks the best with the piece, because it's all going to vary piece by piece. And everyone's skin is different. So when you're working with so many different types of skin, you know, a color that I put in you may not look the same on the next person. Maybe they get too much sun. Maybe the melanin in their skin is just crazy different. Like, I know African American clients that I have that I've put pink and lime green in, and it looks insane. I haven't been able to do that with other people that have the same pigment of skin, you know? And I wouldn't have done that, but I saw that he already had like healed tattoos that were like oranges and yellows, and they looked amazing in his skin tone. So we were able to go with pinks and greens, but the average person, I wouldn't use that, you know?
Yeah.
Sometimes you don't realize that until you actually get to tattooing the person, like, oh, this person's skin is like not very good, you know, or they get a lot of sun and they drink a lot. So maybe, you know, maybe I'll steer away from certain color transitions because of that. Like, if I know a person drinks a lot and they get a lot of sun, I'm not going to put teal in their forearm because I know it's going to turn green.
Yeah.
Unless I am thinking about that and I'm going to make the transition look like it's supposed to turn green. I feel like as long as you make it look like it's supposed to be that way, then it's fine.
Yeah.
But if there's like an off inconsistency where it doesn't look like it's supposed to be that way, then you're not fine. Then it's just weird.
Yeah. I think most of the time when you run into trouble with that in that scenario, it's when you depend on that color being whatever, a focal point or being like the backbone of that area of the tattoo. I know that I can remember one of the worst tattoo experiences that I had was with a mint green is what Eternal calls it, but but that like kind of teal blue, like light blue green. And the lady, beautiful girl, model, that had kind of an olivey complexion. And when it healed, it just looked like it had brown speckles in it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I was dependent on it. It was like this. It was water, and it was rippling back towards a pagoda. Is that what and so it kind of led you into the piece, and it was on her forearm, and it was a very important part of the piece to pull you into it, and it lost all of that. I mean, the tattoo overall is still fine, but that was a piece of it that I thought was gonna pull you to the pagoda, that was gonna pull you to this swoop of cherry blossoms to these other things. And once I saw it healed, I was like, oh no, what happened? Yeah.
So the melanin, especially I'm not trying to put anybody on blast here. So if you want to cut this out of the thing, but
right.
Eternal white, when you're mixing the teal down with white in Asian skin tones, in anybody that's any darker than myself, the pigment is kind of fighting the melanin in the skin in a way, is what it looks like. Now, I've had coworkers that have put really light teal in tan skin like that, olive tone skin, and in a year, it peels again.
Oh, I've heard of that too, yeah.
And then it doesn't look brown anymore. It looks lighter. It looks like light teal. I think some of that could be the amount of sun they're getting. Maybe inadvertently. You were talking about a sleeve, especially if it's on the left arm.
Yeah,
It's the color closest to the arm closest to the window when you're driving. It's going to get more sun.
Yeah.
Being a tattooer, I'm inside 8 hours a day or whatever, and my arm still, the orange that was in there 10 years ago is gone. And I hardly ever get out in the sun.
Yeah.
So very minimal sun damage has caused that. So that means that very minimal sun damage on any color like that in tan skin or olive skin or whatever you want to call it, it's gonna affect it in some ways. Now, it may peel in the future, it may not. But I feel like that's something that it has to be taken into account. If you don't know, then you don't know. But I've seen it a lot, and I feel like the best thing to do is, when you're starting with the black, you can understand how much their skin will take or not take, or if their skin is past the spectrum, if it's past a medium tone, then it's probably not going to take that. And I noticed that with even with wash lines. When you do a wash line on a person whose skin is just a little bit darker, it almost looks like a scar. Rather than a wash line, because it's not light enough. So what you're seeing is not the pigment, it's the actual just mark that the needle is making. Whereas someone pale, you're seeing the pigment more than you're seeing the mark that the needle has made. Does that make sense?
Yeah. It's a good way to think about it.
Yeah. But I've seen that quite a bit over the years. I've had people come back from other tattooers that did light teal in them. And that happened, and my only explanation is, look, that happens, we're not really aware until you do it that it's going to happen with that person. So I just try to steer clear of it as much as I can. But
it's a hard thing to predict, for sure.
It really is. I had a collaboration that I did with another tattooer, and he had done a lot of light teal in it. And even though she's not very dark, she's a very light type of complexion. I believe she's Chinese. Her skin was really smooth. Her skin took the ink really well. She had really good skin. But because of the tone of her skin, all of that mint type of color turned way more greenish brown than it did a light teal. So now we're going back and we're adjusting things and trying to use other colors to soften it and make it seem like it was meant to be that way from the beginning.
Yeah.
Because I don't think that packing the same tone over top of it will help very much. You know, it's probably the color around it that's going to help the most.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry if I got off track there.
No, all that's great. All that's great. Sweet. Well, that's good. I don't know how far in we are right now. I assume this thing's already cut off, so I assume that we're an hour or so in.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. That's
Sorry, I get to talk. Oh, yeah.
No, yeah.
We really are.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. We're gonna drop. I mean, I'm sure there's been tons of stuff dropped in. I'm sure there'll be a lot of questions on this episode. We've talked about maybe trying to do that workshop another time, or maybe doing it without the. Well, I don't know, but if people are interested in doing in learning a little bit more about illustrative tattooing, particularly large scale illustrative tattooing, mapping the body, taking into consideration like vantage points and things that are a little more advanced than maybe beginning tattooing, I guess, then I'll make sure to drop a link down, because I learned a ton the last time that Andy and I did this workshop last year, and we had 6 or 8 people in the class that I think learned a lot too. And I've seen a big difference in their actual tattoo work since
I've seen
then.
some from Ty that I was pretty stoked about.
Yeah. Ty is really doing some incredible stuff, and Million as well. Million he's moved into a more kind of like soft painterly realism type of thing that's looking really good. So. Anyways, I'll try to put a little more information in the show notes. Maybe we'll have a list or something where you could like put your name down and just let us know if you're interested in learning a little bit more about that. But man, thanks, dude. That was awesome.
Thank you.
And thanks for tattooing me the last 2 days. I'm sorry to everybody if you heard crinkling as I turned. I'm completely wrapped in saran wrap, and I can hear it of my shirt against the plastic wrap every time that I move, so I'm sorry. I'm sorry to Scott, who has to edit this audio, but thanks. We'll see you next time.
Hey, really quickly before you go, did you know that you can get discounts on tattoo machines, gear, supplies, things like that, the things that you're already buying, and support the Fireside Tattoo Network at the same time? Check out our affiliate links in the video description below before you make your next purchase. You'll get a nice little discount, and we get a small kickback that allows us to keep this channel rolling. Also, be sure to subscribe to our channel, sign up for our newsletter to stay up to date with what we're doing, what's going on in the world of Fireside, and visit our website to get yourself a new Fireside t-shirt or a coffee mug, and check out our courses and webinars while you are there. We got a lot of good educational material. All right, that's all the sales I'm gonna do. Thank you guys.